This piece by Giovanni Corvaia can be seen in the collection of the Victoria and Albert Museum in London. It is a mesmerizing example of the artist's ability to transform the familiar materials of gold and platinum into thin fibers that more closely resemble thread or even hair. In the hands of Giovanni Corvaia, gold can be made into works that more resemble fabric or fur than metal. Corvaia has spent a number of years researching alloys that remain ductile when drawn thinner than 10 microns, resulting in this amazing material. He has been able to achieve not only very small widths in the wire he makes, but also subtle color changes from white to shades of pink and green. Corvaia's crowning achievement, the Golden Fleece collection, is comprised of several pieces created from golden thread. The very idea recalls the inaccessibility of the legend of the Golden Fleece. Guarded by a dragon, the fleece symbolizes the embodiment of the unachievable. That is, until now. With the skills acquired over many years of practice, Giovanni Corvaia takes these threads of gold and has created works that could come straight out of a fairy tale of imagination, such as a handkerchief of pure gold on a handmade loom, or a bracelet encircling the wrist in golden fur. Fur made from this golden thread adorns meticulously made jewelry pieces, creating a tactile experience that few can imagine. The Golden Fleece headpiece, suggestive of a crown or fur-trimmed hat, has been woven from over 200 yards of gold thread. Giovanni Corvaia was born in 1971 in Padua, Italy. He was interested in metals from childhood, and at the age of 13 he enrolled in a local art school with the metals and jewelry department and studied under master goldsmiths Francesco Pavan and Paolo Maurizio. After completion of his education in Italy, Corvaia enrolled in the Royal College of Art in London and achieved his Master of Art in 1992. After his graduation, Corvaia worked in his hometown of Padua while exhibiting and teaching workshops all over the world. In 2001, he moved to the medieval Etruscan town of Todi in the mountains north of Rome. He has renovated a 14th century building to house his studio. From these picturesque surroundings, he teaches intensive courses as well as continuing his artistic practice as a goldsmith. For the purpose of this project, Giovanni Corvaia graciously agreed to an interview from his workshop in Todi. At what point in your life did you decide to become a goldsmith, and what was the decision like for you?
Well, I decided to become a goldsmith and making jewelry when I enrolled in an art school, and that was at the age of 13. In Italy, you choose your direction in high school, and so when you enroll in a particular type of high school, in my town there was an art school with metalwork and jewelry department, and I enrolled in that. I was fascinated by metal much before that. I actually remember that when I was studying as a child, I was studying in the music conservatory, and my art teacher was actually trained as a goldsmith, and I realized much later that the first fascination with goldsmithing came before I enrolled in the art school, but from an early age. And so the desire of making jewelry was there much before. And then at a certain point, I actually discovered that it did exist a school for goldsmiths, and I enrolled in that.
What training do you feel prepared you the most for your work?
This is a quite difficult question to answer, because I don't know how I would be if I had a different training or a different upbringing. I think that everything is quite important in the formation of a person and in the development of a person. I think it's important what kind of parents I had and what kind of teachers I met. As I said, I did study music when I was a child, and then I moved into something that I felt it was more suitable for me, which was making jewelry. I was lucky to meet some people that were very important in the field, and we liked each other. And um, definitely studying music taught me that to acquire a skill, you need to practice a lot. And there is not very much difference in between learning an instrument and learning how to use some of the tools we use.
Are there other jewelers or artists that you consider an influence on your work?
Definitely at the beginning, yes. I was fortunate to study with a few very good artists and very good teachers. If I have to name the two most important artists in my training, that would be my professor Francesco Pavan and my master Paolo Maurizio. I can say that from Francesco Pavan, I learned more the art form of contemporary goldsmithing, while from Paolo Maurizio, I learned how to think and how to solve technical issues. And in a way, while Paolo Maurizio taught me how to learn, also Francesco Pavan taught me how to teach, and that was because he was a great teacher. And so both of the things are very precious skills that they gave me, and I'm still enormously grateful to those two people.
Do you work alone or do you have assistants or employees?
I work on my own, completely alone. I do everything in the workshop, including cleaning and the maintenance. I very often miss not having a helper. On the other hand, when we are talking about working on a piece of jewelry, on a piece of mine, I am very particular about every single detail of my pieces of jewelry. So I cannot ask somebody else to do it exactly how I want it, and I'm not very flexible with making compromises on the piece of jewelry. And uh, um, and so that's one of the reasons why it's very difficult for me to. I did train a lot of people, but mainly they were working on their things, not as assistant. I was working for them, and they were not working for me.
You're represented by a gallery who promote your work. Do you do any of your own promotion?
I do. I do very little promotion of my work. I not because I snob the job, but because I feel I'm not so good at that, and I feel it is actually a different job. Either you're trained as an art dealer or you're trained as a maker, and so my art dealer doesn't really design my things, so as in the same way as I don't. I, in the same way I do not tell him where to exhibit and how to exhibit. On the other hand, I do sometimes, I am present at some shows and to uh, interact with the clients and give more information. I believe that nobody knows my work as well as I do, and I can explain it. But just to communicate what there is behind and what is not so obvious just by looking through a showcase.
What would you say that your work is about? Are there any concepts that you're trying to convey through your work?
My work does contain some concepts, I'm sure about that. And well, I would like to think of my work as a combination of a few elements, a bit of an alchemy of a few elements. And the main one are skill, passion, time, and noble metal, gold and platinum. And as a paradox, gold and platinum are the easiest to obtain. It's only a matter of buying it. while time is actually one of the rarest and most vanishing commodity of our time, and skill becomes more and more rare because it's somehow, to my point of view or to my knowledge, is strictly connected to time. And passion and love is either you have it or you don't force it.
Yes.
It happens. It's uncontrollable.
Can you talk about your creative process and the decisions that you make when you're designing a piece?
I actually I tend not to design a piece. It's not that I sit down at the table and I decide, okay, the next piece is going to be this and this. I do not draw anymore. I tend to visualize my pieces in my head, and somehow, in, after doing making my work for a few years, I stopped needing making drawings. I do make drawings when I need to calculate proportions and just get sizes mainly. I usually form and figure an object while I'm working on other works, and generally, what I like to consider the creative process as a process of transformation. Basically, you transform a suggestion or an idea which comes from the reality, because we are immersed in reality, and we get a lot of inputs from the reality, and we transform it into feelings and memories, so into something abstract. And then the design process is actually the materialization of this abstract concept. So it's actually very much like the alchemical process, the alchemical job, which is transforming what is invisible into visible, and what is visible into invisible. So basically, the reality, which is what inspires us, becomes an idea. We extract the essence of the reality, and then we transform an idea into something real, because an object of art is something tangible. And this is, in a very abstract way, the process. And then there is a matter of how we express that. And here comes the language, which is the technique and the skill. The technique is actually what allows us to express and to transform this immaterial entity, which is our idea, into our message, into a real object. What is considered the first book of alchemy, which is the book by Hermes, the I don't know how it's called in English, Poimandros. It actually says this. It simplifies the whole science into one law. You have to make what is visible into invisible, and what is invisible into visible. It makes sense in many aspects of the human activity, basically.
As a jeweler, your work is designed for the body. However, it's rarely seen or photographed being worn. How do you feel about that?
Usually when I design something, I don't really have any particular body in mind, and it's not so important to me, the fact that an object is worn or not. I actually think that sometimes it's not necessary. It's very interesting because jewelry is considered a form of applied art as much as ceramic or glass or woodworking. I exhibit with a gallery that deals with the contemporary applied arts of high level, I think. And somehow I never hear a question about a piece of ceramic or a piece of glass. Can I use it? Can I put flour in a pot? Can I eat from a plate? Nobody that buys a piece of contemporary art, ceramic, would ask this question. And while with jewelry it's different, they do ask it, and if you do make something that is more like a ceremonial piece, or it's not really intended to be used. There is always this question, but if I use it, it gets ruined. Yes, sometime this is the case. The fact of using a piece of art, it actually turns it more into a product, which is not necessary. Consuming something, it can even be preserved and kept it as it was born, as it was designed. The golden fleas are the best example of what I said. They are intended as, first of all, one-off pieces, because there is no way I'm going to do them again. And it's not necessary to wear them.
You also create small objects like little boxes. What, if anything, are you communicating with these small objects?
About the boxes and about the pieces that are not the jewelry, those are also pieces that allow me to have a bigger public, and to not to be relating to only one gender. A collector of a box. Basically, I can please and I can give my message to anybody. So I was a bit also, because of this issue of wearability, a box or a bottle or a handkerchief is an object on its own. It's not related to a particular female or male body.
The jewelry field is becoming more technology-oriented with the advent of computer-aided design and computer-aided manufacturing. Your processes seem to have evolved directly from traditional handworking methods, yet it's considered highly innovative. Do you see yourself embracing any new technologies for your work?
I don't have anything against new technology. The only thing that I have against it is that I don't know it and I don't know how to use it. So if I have to incorporate new technology into my work, my way of working, the first thing I have to do is to train and to learn how to use it. I don't believe in an easy solution that solves the problem that I find in my work. I do use kind of technology which is quite modern, quite cutting edge technology. It doesn't really show, and this is actually very important to me, because the technology is there to allow you to achieve a purpose. It's not the aim, and it's not what actually one wants to show. I express ideas in a form of expression which should talk to the heart of people, to the sensitivity of people. I don't really care so much if the technique is understood, and is actually it is understood only and appreciated very much, but mainly by professionals, which is not really my aim. I'm glad that they like it and they appreciate it, but I'd like to make my work more universal, which for some reason it is universal. So the technology, there is some, there is not really what we consider computer-aided technology. That is not, it's not my cup of tea. I'm still mechanic.
You've spoken about beauty, pure beauty, and the difference with styles, which could be considered popular beauty or changeable. What advice would you give to artists who wish to create beauty in their work?
I don't really have advice. I can talk about what I see. In contemporary art, there is I find there is much less poetry than there was more in the past. The main aim of an artist, of all the artists, is to get noticed. The artists, they have this problem of wanting to be appreciated like everybody else, and that is understandable and it's fair. With art, it's much easier to get noticed by disturbing when in anything. You know, the best way to catch the attention of a person is through either violence or sex or kind of very primordial feelings. To kind of shock with beauty, it's much more difficult because you need to install a relationship which is sentimental and intellectual with the viewer, and the main difficulty in that is again this big issue that we have, that there is no time. There is very little time to make things. There is even less time to view things. So to capture the attention and to fascinate, to involve somebody with beauty, you need usually some time. And it's a hard job. On the other hand, leaves, I think, leaves a nicer world than making provocative or ugly things.
You use a water torch in your work. What is the advantage of that particular piece of equipment?
A water torch is a very simple mechanism for the physics of it. It basically does the electrolysis of water and splits it into the two elements that compose it, hydrogen and oxygen. And it produces, by passing electricity through water, you produce exactly the right amount of hydrogen and oxygen to give a perfect combustion. And when you recombine them, you develop some heat, some calories, which is exactly the same amount of energy that you need to split it. And the particular, the character of the flame, so of these calories that they express into a flame, is that you get a flame that is very concentrated, and it's the heat is only in front of the needle of the torch, and is not on the side. That allows you to have your heat source right in a spot. And when you're doing very detailed work, sometimes I need to melt or to solder a wire which has something next to it at a distance of less than half a millimeter. And you want to heat up only what you need. And in that case, you do need a flame that doesn't bounce and doesn't heat up what you don't want. So the main reason why I like it, besides it being a very clean and ecological equipment, is the way how I can control it and how it is versatile but precise at the same time. I don't want to say bad things about lasers. In a way, I prefer very much. I have tried the lasers, and I'm not so keen on them because a laser is it actually burns the material. You cannot control the temperature that the object receives in the spot where you point the beam of the laser. In some cases, when you want to cut it, it just vaporizes the material. When you want to solder, it kind of fries it, and the metal suffers a bit to be overheated. If you slice it and you look through a microscope, you would find lots of little air bubbles. While with the flame, no matter how hot it, by judging the distance, you can get exactly the temperature that you want.
What tools have you made yourself?
I must say that I have invented a lot of devices and a lot of little systems and aids for working. If you're asking if I make my own draw dies, the answer is no. I have them made by a specialized company, and the production of very fine wire is exists. There are industries that can produce wires down to the size of 4 or 5 microns. I can actually make them a bit thinner. I don't know if the industry doesn't produce it, because actually what you get finer than the finest we can make, it's a mass that is not usable. It starts becoming like a putty. It just rejoins together. You get some qualities that is not anymore of the wire. You can make felt out of it. I do make a lot of devices, and what is particular about my work is that I use very low technology system to produce something that only high-tech industries can do it. Obviously, an industry works by a few kilometers per hour of wire, while I don't need that kind of speed, because when I make 100 grams of fine fibers, it's enough for a very large job.
What recommendations do you have for aspiring jewelry artists?
Well, I don't have many suggestions to give. I just would say to be prepared to be prepared to a very long training, and because I think that it's important to acquire a skill, and the skills are not informations. It's not a matter of knowing how things are done. It's a matter of practicing and being able to do it. If we think about who we really admire in terms of artists and any type of art, art is a bit of a performance, and when we appreciate the performance, we appreciate the way the performer is acting, and that is the result of many years of training and practice. Right. So there is no shortcut. If you want to do it, but be ready to practice a lot. And another big thing I always say to people is, don't think about doing what you think you're supposed to do. Do what you really want to do, what you love. So follow your passion, because things come out better if you love them.